comfortably zoned with the zigzag man in Alameda, California, pushing on the doors of life marked pull and fighting the unholy trinity as we go. Big business, organized religion, and government.
Welcome to tonight's edition of the Duke's Court. I'd like to welcome my co-host, Chris Dump Fletcher, and Gary the Golden Jet Kinn, and I am Dave Boom Boom Finoli. Gentlemen, how are you tonight?
We're good, Dave. Love your nicknames. They're a kick.
All right. Well, tonight we'll start off by maybe celebrating one of the great Pirate World Series players of all time. In 1971, what I consider the greatest relief performance in World Series history. Bruce Kison comes in the first inning when Luke Walker is suffering. First night game in World Series history. The Pirates lose. They're down 3-1. And Bruce Kison throws 6 1/3 innings of one-hit ball, no walks. Pirates come back to win the game and win the series, which they could not have done without that performance. Bruce unfortunately died this weekend after a long bout with cancer, and certainly one of the best competitors on the mound in Pirate history. Tough guy, never afraid to buzz somebody if it's in the best interest of the team, and just some great memories with him, and certainly a heck of a scout. Fletch, what are some of your memories of Bruce Kison growing up?
Well, I have to say I also got the chance to meet Bruce a couple of times when I was doing some writing for the Pirates, and he was just absolutely as nice as could be. Everything you said is exactly right. He was a bulldog on the mound, even though probably a good stiff breeze could have knocked him off. But he would buzz people. He buzzed Mike Schmidt. Mike Schmidt said something to him, and Keith said, "Come on out here and tell me." And they got into a little scuffle. So he, like you said, he didn't back down from anyone. The other thing I remember about that '71 World Series with Bruce Kison is that he was scheduled to get married the day of Game 7, and they had to fly him out on a helicopter with his best man Bob Moose, and there was all this concern that he wasn't going to make his own wedding.
Oh, man. But he fortunately did. Bob Prince, as I recall, set that up for him.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And he also pitched well for that '79 team. Don't forget that.
Oh, no, not at all. Gary, you have any
I think you guys all stole my thunder. I think there was a lot of talk. We were all pretty young then, that 1971 period. We were all kids, but there's a lot of talk about, in that day and age, like, should you be playing night World Series games? Are you breaking tradition? We know how married baseball is to tradition. He was a huge factor in that first night game that everybody watched. I remember it was like almost the first Monday Night Football game with the Jets and the Browns. Everybody complained about it, but once it came on, everybody loved it. Kison was a dominant factor in that game, and Fletch, you stole my second thunder. People forget how this guy had a pretty long career, and he was very versatile. He could start for you. He could come in the middle innings, and honestly, before Tecalvi got there and pretty much took it over, he could close for you too. He was a fierce competitor with a lot of different arm angles and deliveries before that was talked about, and I think in that whole Pirate era, which was a glorious era between, even kind of starting late 1970 through like 79, even getting into the early 80s. He was a huge factor before he went out to the Angels. So, he was one of those guys that keeps the games going. He wasn't the biggest name. He didn't throw no-hitters on national TV like Candelaria did. He didn't die young like Moose did. He didn't have that kind of accolade. But he was the kind of guy, if you're going to win consistently over a long period of time, he's going to win. So,
Absolutely. Always tough when one of the heroes as we grew up was, but certainly Bruce was an outstanding part of the Pirate Nation, and I said in my mind that there's never been a more important relief appearance in World Series history. And certainly what yes, he also had an impressive one-hit performance in that game. So,
yes, he did.
When the time when they needed him, he was there. But tonight we're going to start out by talking about the surprise of baseball in the Keystone State early on this year. The Phillies have, at least me, I don't know about you guys, but at least they've stunned me with their start. They're 32-26, 2 games out of first. Have an outstanding young pitching staff led by Aaron Nola, and then they mixed it up with a free agent purchase with Jake Arrieta, who's having another great season. And the Pirates, at one point in time, were 9 games over 500 before the 4-13 stride they're on right now. They've come back down to earth a little bit, but I think it's an 83-84 win team. I think the starting lineup is just so much more solid than it was a year ago. We certainly had McCutchen in the lineup last year. To me, the whole controversy over him being in center field or not, it seemed like he pouted at the beginning of the year for a while. Certainly, except for a month and a half period where he was outrageous, he had a poor season. You're also minus Garrett Cole, who is having a resurgence in Houston. But what you have on this team right now is depth. The Garrett Cole trade actually has been a huge one for Pittsburgh. Musgrove, who was banged up a little last night, but had a couple of good starts before that. Colin Moran has had a solid season, a little better at defensively at third base than I originally thought he would be. Feliz is struggling a little bit, but he's got a live arm that I think is going to be effective at some point. And then Jason Martin in Altoona has just ripped apart the Eastern League for the first month and a half. So they've gotten good return on it. They have Corey Dickerson, who they would not have gotten if McCutchen was still on the team, and has certainly been an outstanding force at the plate, hitting .316, power down a little, but he's trying to control the bat a little, cutting his strikeouts down, getting on base a lot more. Defensively, he's been a little better than we originally anticipated. But some of the frustrating things that we see there, Gregory Polanco, who has just completely struggled since the first 10 games of the year. Last night, I was at the game. It's a towering ball that looks like it might be a home run into the river, goes foul, but, he ends up, you get that surge, what it can do, and then the next pitch he strikes out with 2 men on base when the score was 4-0, so it certainly could have been a turnaround. Why hasn't the team gone to Austin, who's continually, yes, he's going to calm down inevitably, and he's probably going to fall towards 300, but right now while he's hot, and he's a better defender than Polanco, who's looked lost out there so much. Why isn't he in the game? Why has Sean Rodriguez, who is hitting 162, second year in a row, he's been in the 100. He's made an error in 5 different games in a row that he's been in. He's just not providing anything defensively. He's not providing anything offensively, yet continually he keeps being plugged into the lineup. He's played in 40% of the games at this point, and I don't know about you guys, but I don't remember the last time we've had a bobblehead day with a guy who's hit 100, a pitcher who's hit 100 over the course of 2 years in a row, which they have one coming up this year. So there's still a lot of frustration out there on maybe not getting the best out of this team. What do you see, Fletcher?
Well, I think that there's going to be a lot of bobbleheads available the next day after that game.
I would agree with you.
I was surprised though that they didn't somehow work in some Gatorade coolers in the bobblehead that might be able to be knocked around. If he could hit a baseball as well as he hit a water cooler, he'd be all right.
Ball needs to be as big and orange like that.
So. It's been a tough couple of weeks for the Pirates. I mean, they finished May something like 3-10, and they just. You mentioned Polanco's struggle. The other one, even though he had a good start, Trevor Williams we're seeing a velocity drop. 2 or 3 miles an hour makes a huge difference at the major leagues, and we're seeing that. He has the ball tonight as we're talking, so we'll see what happens there. The Rodriguez thing, I just don't get. But, that being said, there are a lot of really good signs that we've seen in this 30. First of all, I never thought they would be 30-30 at this point. Austin Meadows looks like a nice ball player. Glasnow, I think they're finding a role for him. He's eating some innings. He's looking pretty decent in a lot of that. You mentioned Rodriguez. I'm looking at the farm team too, and you're seeing Kevin Kramer's really playing well down there. At what point do you make that move with Rodriguez? It's got to be coming close.
Sure. And don't forget about Jung is really kind of shaken off the cobwebs of what he did with Winterball, and has been outstanding, although for a short period of time, but has really been outstanding, hitting close to 500 in his 5 games with Bradenton, and he sounds like he's about to be brought up to Indianapolis, so he's probably not far away at this point either.
And the other thing, Musgrove's really endeared himself to the fans with his base running, if nothing else. And I guess really that game, that to me was sort of a turning point. The game before that, where with the collision at home place with Diaz, the Pirates just seemed to me to be gutless after that. I mean, I'm not saying they needed to buzz Rizzo after that play, but they needed to do something instead of roll over and play dead. And I was just really disappointed in the lack of fire that I saw in that team. They went down, 8-0 the next game?
Oh, yeah, and they put the catcher on the top of the shoulder, which didn't seem like why would even bother at that point. I agree with you. I think Musgrove's slide seemed to, I thought was going to kind of invigorate the team a little bit, but still seemed to be flying, unfortunately.
I mean, I just don't think the game, ever since the Giants complained about the collision with Posey and the Utley hit on whatever, I mean, and I guess these guys are making quite a bit of money. They don't, I just don't think they see the game the same way. I think the league penalizes hard baseball like it used to. I mean, I'm not sure they're alone in that. I mean, I kind of see that, Fletch, Dave, other places too. I mean, at live games and other stuff, it's just not the same. It's almost like, I don't know exactly what the reasons are, and I agree with that. I saw the highlights because I was in Florida. But I mean, you wonder, like, what's the is it that these guys are making so much money they don't care? Is it because the league's going to come down hard on that stuff? And we certainly have leadership in the game that is politically correct in everything that they do. And I wonder about some of this stuff, and I can't quite figure it out. But you're right. With a divisional opponent, something like that, you would have thought there would have been a harder response. So then there should have been. And I think there should have been. So there's a long season to go. They probably still play each other another 10, 12 times, so we'll see. But I'm not really expecting, I hate to say it, guys, the retaliation like you used to see years ago. And I think something's lost by that. I really do.
Yeah.
So,
And you hear as much as Joe Madden can be irritating, I don't think he was incorrect in basically saying that that's how the game should be played. I mean, instead of criticizing Musgrove for doing that, he kind of complimented him and said that was just playing baseball hard.
Yeah.
Now, what are you seeing down in Philadelphia? You're right outside the city. And
I thought about this a little bit. Dave, I thought about this a little bit. Like, it's interesting how the teams have a lot of similarities, both Pittsburgh and the Phillies, I think. And then there's some other things that are glaring differences. And, I thinking about, like, who can sustain this and why. I actually think the Phillies probably have a better chance. And what I mean by that is primarily because of the division. I think the division that the Pirates are in, I think it's quite a bit better. I think the Brewers are probably not, they're not the greatest team we're ever going to see, but with some of the moves they made in the offseason, picking up Yelich, picking up Kane, some of these arms that they seem, who knows whether Hader is for real or not, but he's certainly striking out, 2 per inning. I think that the Brewers are probably going to be in this the whole way. I think the Cubs I don't think the Cubs are as good. And with all Madden's tinkering, sometimes I think he actually hurts the momentum in the organization, despite the the public love for him. But I think that the division the Pirates are in is actually a much tougher division. And I think that includes the Cardinals, whereas I think the East is a pretty weak division. So as a result, I think the Phillies might be able to sustain it primarily from the standpoint they got a bunch of games against the Marlins and a bunch of games against the Mets. I think the Braves will come a little bit back to earth, which they've been. I think the Nationals, unlike the other Washington team, ironically, I don't think the Nationals are as good as they were, although I still think they have the best starting staff. So I think the Phillies actually probably have a better chance to stay in the hunt and play for a playoff position than the Pirates may. But, you know, when you look at it, I mean, both starting staffs have been pretty darn good through the first 2 months. I mean, beyond the pickup of Arrieta, who's been pretty good, I mean, Nola's been fantastic. And two guys that they never expected, which is this guy Nick Pivetta, and Velasquez finally seems like he's battled his arm trouble, and he's striking out a ton of guys. I mean, the Phillies got very, very good arms 1 through 4. You know, some of these guys haven't ever lasted a full season. We'll see. They certainly can't find a fifth starter. But I think they may have the pieces to actually make a move. For one reason or another, you know, Hernandez is not a great second baseman here, Cesar Hernandez. He's a terrible base runner sometimes, but every year he puts up solid offensive statistics. He's doing it again. He's hitting about 285. Got a bunch of triples. He's hitting the ball out of the park, and he steals bases. They always seem to want to move the guy. And I think a lot of other teams would like to have him, depending on, you know, what they would have to give away. They got this kid Kingery who they're trying to turn into a Chris Taylor type of player. I'm not really sure I'd be doing that with a player that's 23. I think it's affecting his offense, but clearly he's a natural second baseman. The Phillies have a piece to move there. I think they got a kid who's hitting a bunch of home runs who I don't know a hell of a lot about, named Cousins down in AAA. He's doing the same thing that Hoskins did down there last year and the year before, hitting a home run every couple games or whatever. He's a natural left fielder. You know, I think they probably have, with all of the excess outfielders they have, Nick Williams, a young outfielder, even Herrera, who's having a great year again, another guy that they always seem to want to criticize here, but year after year, you know, hits between 275, 280. Despite his base running mistakes and his laziness sometimes, always performs pretty well. The Phillies are going to have a couple pieces I think some teams are going to want, you know, and particularly second-tier teams that are a long way away from winning. So they may be able to kind of commandeer something there. I think they need another starter. And, you know, the Pirates bullpen, the people in the Pirates bullpen that you thought would be good really haven't been that good. You know, even when you look at like Glasnow has been pretty good, and I think they are finding a role for him. His arm is amazing. You know, Vasquez has 10 saves, but he's got a 5 earned run average, and quite frankly, whenever the chips have been down, he hasn't been that good. And the Phillies back-end bullpen, that's the one similarity. The Phillies bullpen, you keep going this guy Neris, who for 2 years now really hasn't proven that he can finish these games out consistently. So, I mean, to me, that's the thing that's going to affect both teams' longevity. I mean, I actually think their young players are pretty good. I mean, not the... You know, they joked about this in Moneyball that, you know, Meadows would look like a major league player. Well, I mean, to me, he does. You know, at that height, with that length, and that swing, and the way that he's graceful, I mean, you know, that may not be critical in terms of all this numbers and Moneyball era we're in, but you know what? To me, that guy looks like he's got a major league player's body. You know,
well, I think the problem is that they need to get Felipe Rivero back. This Vasquez guy just isn't cut yet.
I agree. I mean, I agree with that. But you know, if you said that their best relievers would be this guy Crick coming out of the bullpen and Rodriguez, and then their worst relievers might be, you know, Vasquez and Contos and some of those guys, would you have believed that in the beginning of the year? No.
No. And that's a killer. You basically have two guys that are struggling horribly now, but it's your 8th and 9th inning guy. So they're the two most important guys in your pen. I think
the other thing is, guys, that there's no room for error in a team like the Pirates. There's none.
No, and that's the difference between the Pirates and the Phillies. Is the Phillies seem to have some money behind them, so I agree that they're going to be the ones who may succeed over the others because they're the ones that are probably going to be able to plug the hole here or there and hang on to some of their guys over the long haul. Where you're right, Fletch. I mean, they don't have room for error. They don't have they have a good minor league system in the lower end, but they don't have an upper end where they can plug holes like the Phillies seem to be doing right now either. I think you mentioned Kramer, who has been outstanding in Indianapolis. He looks very smooth defensively. I am in no way, shape, and form a Jordy Mercer fan, both defensively or offensively. I think he's a horrible clutch hitter, and whereas he leads the National League over the last 5 years in fielding percentage, that's because they don't count the several balls that go to his right and left that he can't move towards. So I think that is an area they can upgrade. I think Jung can take the Rodriguez role, hopefully, if he continues his progress. But right now, they don't have anything in the minors that can plug in the bullpen at this point. So is it time for Glasnow to take important innings at the back end of the pull? Maybe Crick becomes your eighth inning guy. Glasnow, you're going through while Vasquez works on. I'm not saying to give up on Vasquez at this point because he's shown too much over the course of last year that he can do the job. But maybe it's a thing where he needs to work on it a little in the earlier innings.
Well, I think he may be tipping his pitches. That's one of the theories. I think maybe one of the mysterious stints on the DL might do him a bit of good.
You mean the Ivan Nova Memorial DL list?
Absolutely.
Well, it's funny. That name to me is the key for the Pirates because as I look at them, I didn't realize what you said, Fletch, about Williams' velocity dropping because although I did buy the package this year for the first time in a number of years, but I have not seen a ton of the Pirates yet because I'm watching hockey all the time. But, Cool, Talion, and Williams' numbers are almost mirror images of each other. One guy's given up more home runs. One guy may have struck out more. But that threesome is pretty good. If Nova rounds back into some of the form that he had in Pittsburgh, 1 through 4, they're not bad. They can compete with a lot of teams. The Phillies, I think that's a big question mark, guys. I think I'm pretty comfortable with Nola. He was a high draft pick. Everybody knew he was a top flight, prospect. He's certainly showing that now. He's gotten used to this junky ballpark where the three of us could hit the ball out with the right kind of fast ball. He's pitching differently. Arrieta's a warrior. I think he should shut his big mouth sometimes, like the other day. But he is a warrior. He's probably going to give you, 195.
What did he say the other day?
The other day here, I guess when they went out and got whipped by the Giants, which I only saw part of the last game because I was coming back from a vacation. But he said something like, these guys need to be more professional, which honestly I don't know if a pitcher should ever quite say something like that about position players, number one, and we're the worst shifting team in the league. All this nonsense that he communicated to the press. Well, first of all, he had one great year 3 years ago. He's had a lot of up and down years. He hasn't been so good the past couple of years. And quite frankly, he's had some great starts here, and he's had some poor starts here. Honestly, I don't think that's leadership. I think when you're in an organization for a while and some of that stuff, then you start commenting on that. To be carping about that in the press and spouting off about that, just shut up, honestly, in my view, in my personal view about it. So I don't think that helped a young team that might be struggling. I probably would have done that internally, which is, something, honestly, I think in Chicago. There's a reason, I think, why. I don't think it was just his downside or his velocity dropping. Epstein made no attempt to sign him in Chicago. This may be the reason. He kind of always struck me as a kind of a me first kind of guy. But the bottom line is, though, their first two can match with anybody. I still have to see more from this guy Pivetta. I have to see more from some of the, even Vasquez. Can he last? He's never been able to do that in 3 or 4 years he's been here. Their bullpen is worse than the Pirates, actually, even at the back end. I think that the Pirates actually, on the mound, I feel pretty good in the starting staff, better than Philadelphia. But I think Philadelphia probably has a few more chips, as you guys have alluded to deal with at the deadline to fill a need so they can stay in playoff contention. And honestly, they don't have to play the Cubs and the Brewers as many times as the Pirates do. I still think the Braves are a little bit of a mirage as much as the Phillies are. I think the Mets, clearly, that offense is one of the worst in the National League, despite a couple of the arms that they have. The Marlins are clearly a team that's, again, been just ripped apart, disbanded, minor league, team in some regards. I think Washington will, again, pull away a little bit. But this Washington team, unlike the hockey team, Dave, I'm with you fully. I don't think this Nationals team is as good as some of the teams that have competed in the past. Although, clearly, that 5 group of starters is as good as anybody in the National League, including the Dodgers or anybody else, when you look at it. So,
right.
I mean, I just don't see the Phillies challenging for them. I see the Phillies maybe playing for a potential wild card position, but if they don't fix the back end of the bullpen, I honestly think they're probably about an 82, 84 win team as well. So.
But even if they both finish in that range, I mean, it certainly is a more surprising season than we all expected at the beginning. I'm sure, and hopefully, you just want to get into September with a shot, and just make that month interesting. But also, I started seeing online a little something that seems to come up every year. With Jackie Robinson having his number retired by Major League Baseball and actually all professional baseball. It's retired in the minors too. The talk to have the number 21, whether or not that should be retired by professional baseball. Now last year, the Hartford, I think it's the Hartford Yard Goats, which is their Double-A team in the Eastern League. Actually, when they opened their new stadium, they retired Clementi's number, and they do have that on their wall as retired along with Jackie Robinson. But I mean, my personal opinion is I'd be more happy if teams retired their own numbers. I'm not sure I was ever a fan of the Jackie Robinson honor, although if somebody deserved the honor in baseball history, it would be him. But that being said, if you're going to retire Jackie Robinson's number, I don't see how you can ignore Clementi's. Clementi certainly had 2 strikes against him, prejudice of color and certainly prejudice of language, of his heritage. And we've seen and we've read so much about what he went through in Pittsburgh, what he went through in the majors, and he certainly led the Latin American insurgents, which is very prevalent in the game today. But I don't know how you can't retire his number if you're going to retire Jackie Robinson's. What do you think about that, Gary?
Well, Dave, I hope what I'm going to say here is not going to be controversial too much.
Well, I hope it is, Gary. Be controversial. Come on.
No, Fletch. Look, we think long term, Fletch here, but I think my view of this, Dave, is very similar to yours, and I'm going to be even a little bit stronger. Here's what I mean by that. I think that, Dave, I completely agree with you. You need to leave this up to the organizations. I mean, I think that includes number 42. Okay, I mean, I am not going to go into all the beliefs I have about that, but the bottom line is yes, that was a pioneer. Yes, that was a seminal moment, but the reality of the matter is to mandate that, to me, cheapens the situation. I think if as an organization you feel that's important enough, whether you're in Tampa or Seattle or whatever, to do it, then you do it. But to mandate it, to me is not the process. And I would say the same thing about number 21. But once you've done it, then all of a sudden you've opened yourself up to the situation now that you have to consider it in other situations. So I think Major League Baseball now finds itself in a very, very difficult position. I mean, if you don't do it here with a Hispanic player that changed the course of events and clearly is the seminal player in that regard, now if you don't do that, well, why did you do it in the other case? Which is why I would never open the door in the first place. Not that I'm not intelligent, but that's my belief. Okay, I mean, I think that the retired number thing has gotten a little bit of the modern world feel-good type of thing. Okay, to me, a retired number is something that is very, very, very special to that organization. I guess you can do it because of community work and some other stuff, but to me, I guess I'm a cold individual, but it comes back to performance. I mean, if you are a standout performer over a long period of time, then that number should be considered as something that should be retired. If you're a complete bum in society or whatever, obviously I'd qualify that a little bit, but if the bottom line is you're a normal individual above and beyond everybody else, then that number should be retired. To be doing it, at willy-nilly and wide-ranging broad brushes like this, I mean, to me, I really just don't agree with it. So, I mean, I think if an organization says, hey, You look at some organizations that have heavy use of Hispanic players, the Montreal Expos, even Toronto in the past, organizations that had heavy Hispanic player influence that really changed that organization, made a major impact on it. If they say nobody's going to wear 21, I would support that. If somebody's going to mandate that, that cheapens it to me. It's the same thing, the argument about the Hall of Fame and some of the other things to me. So, Dave, I'm agree with you fully, but I'm even a little bit stronger. I don't even like the 42 retirement. I mean, I think to me that cheapened the situation. I mean, I don't think it really does anything from a fan support standpoint. I don't think it does anything from an attention standpoint or an interest standpoint. I mean, I think it's kind of the world that we're in, why some of that stuff is done. The same reason we're seeing pink bats and blue bats and all this other kind of stuff. I mean, I understand you're dependent upon that money, but it just kind of smacks a little bit of having every team wear like green and black hats and other stuff last weekend because of Memorial Day. I mean, it just strikes me as kind of a money-making scheme veiled, and I don't like it. And
it is.
Yep, and I don't like it. I mean, I just don't like it. I mean, I think if you want to make a political statement, go and make the political statement in the environment. Stop doing it when it comes to sports. So, I mean, I think I would sit with if we believe, Major League Baseball believes this is a seminal player. Okay, so we're asking any organizations to consider the effect of this on your organizations. If 12 do it, so be it. Don't criticize the other 18 that don't.
Right.
That's their prerogative. I mean, I just think that, the 42 thing to me, I still don't like. And now I see, as usual, it's not just something on April 15th. The other day, for some reason, everybody was wearing 42 again. I have no idea why.
I think that was because games were rained out and they're trying to do the makeup. But I agree with you. I think the 42 game is probably the most frustrating because as a fan, I don't know who the hell's out there. Everybody has 42 on. I like the number to find out who the player is, which may sound simplistic, but if I'm watching a game where I maybe don't recognize every player, that does frustrate me. But Fletch, you're probably the biggest Clemente fan I know. You named your son's middle name is after Roberto. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I'm going to go opposite to you guys. Going back to Jackie Robinson, this was an opportunity where baseball actually led the civil rights movement. Baseball did this before the 60s. This was a very important turning point in the history of our country, and I think that needs to be recognized. Now, in terms of everybody wearing 42, for the same reason I don't like that as you do, Dave, but I think what Jackie Robinson did just reverberated throughout, more so than sport. It reverberated throughout society. In many ways, Roberto Clemente does that as well. There are more schools named after him than any other president. There's there's a Roberto Clemente Park in Philadelphia. I mean, this is a guy who is just beloved throughout Latin America. He was arguably the first great Latin American ball player, the first in the Hall of Fame. I think that what he's done in the civil rights area is very important, and I think that it's important for baseball to recognize that. We also have a little bit different relationship. I mean, Roberto Jr. and I are friends. The company that I work for is RC21X. We named it after Roberto Clemente. Our app is named Roberto. So, I mean, I come from it. And as you said, David, my son Dylan's middle name is Roberto. I tried for the first name, but couldn't sell it. I did my best on that one. But he was, and let's also think about Clemente as a baseball player too. I mean, obviously he's one of the greats. I mean, nobody had more hits in the 1960s than he did. He was also an inspiring figure. One of my favorite quotes about Roberto Clemente comes from filmmaker John Sayles. He said, "Everything I learned about style, I learned from Roberto Clemente." So when I was growing up, a baseball player was what I wanted to be, and I wanted to be Roberto Clemente. And it's just, the way that he died, trying to help others, there's no reason for him to get on that plane. But there's corruption happening down in Nicaragua, and he said, "There's no way that's going to happen if I go down there." So he was a force of nature. The way that he mentored a whole generation of Latin players in the late 60s and early 70s. This is a guy who needs to be recognized. And, whether it's a mandate or what, I mean, I think that it's important right now, especially that, that we see that sports goes beyond sports. I mean, these players are given an opportunity, they're given a platform, and I salute the ones like Clemente, like Jim Brown, like Muhammad Ali, like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who use that platform to make change in society. So I say absolutely retire that number, but make people understand why they're retiring that number. Hold people up to a higher standard of behavior in sports.
That's great stuff, and I certainly, if you're looking at a baseball aspect too, again, maybe I'm prejudiced because I'm a Pittsburgh guy, but I think Roberto is a superior player to Jackie Robinson. If we're looking at that aspect on top of everything, but you make great points about how he held himself and how he took on society at a time when that wasn't the popular thing to do. And one thing that always struck me about when Roberto went to Nicaragua, the Sandinista government that was stealing the supplies from the people at the time, I was never sure that Roberto would have survived that had he survived the plane.
Wow.
These were ruthless people. I thought this was one of the just bravest, gutsiest things, because if you look in those terms, that was going to be a whole thing all on its own. It's just unfathomable how somebody could have that kind of guts to try to make that statement at that point. It's rare.
The other thing, guys, is ESPN did a poll of fans, and 74% of the people that they surveyed were behind this. So, I think you need to follow what the people are
Well,
saying.
I think on the other end, and this is a little off that subject, I think Gary had mentioned a point about perhaps the honor has been bastardized a little bit. I look at the New York Yankees, where if you play on a championship team, you seem to get your number retired. The Celtics certainly have been in that.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it just to me, this should be the ultimate honor a team gives. The Steelers have only given it out twice: Ernie Stotner and Joe Green. Whereas nobody's worn number 12. Nobody's worn 58. And I think after Todd Seabaugh, nobody's worn 59 in honor of Jack Ham. They do that, but I mean, to retire a number, they seem to hold that in higher regard than some of these. I mean, the Cleveland Cavaliers have Nate Thurman as a retired number. Nate Thurman played there
4 years.
Right? But he was bad. He wasn't a good player at that point in time. Billy Meyer, who was the first number retired by the Pirates, he had one good year. He was an awful manager in the majors, but he got his number retired because he was a nice guy.
Yep.
Well, the other one that surprises me is number 33, because that's the number that Honus Wagner wore as a coach. Because they didn't have numbers. Well, it was the Yankees that introduced that in the 1920s.
That was the whole game. They were asking some guy what was Honus Wagner's number, and that was the first thought in my head. Quit trying to push us. The guy didn't wear a number.
Yeah. There's no question about Fletcher, your points about Clemente as an individual and as an icon. And I don't think there's any question about, Robinson having the guts and the courage. In some regards, he was a tremendous athlete. The Dodgers were struggling at that time even though they were good with attendance in Brooklyn, if you read some of the background. So, he had the personality that Ricky felt to deal with some of the stuff that he was going to take. I'm not questioning those things, but I just don't care much for the way Major League Baseball is going with some of this, I hate to say it, some of these moves. I don't – it just strikes me as something that is kind of like NFL type of positioning, honestly. Like we're doing this because we're so concerned about, the past history and the social existence, but they really aren't. They're looking to – when I went to Tampa over my vacation – those green and black hats that were supposedly on in the military, They were there for sale.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that to me. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's part of some of this. I think that I'm not sure why Major League Baseball would be concerned about Hispanic fan following, and that Clemente is an icon to them, but obviously they are, and it just feels to me like some of this stuff is cheapening a little bit of the honor. And
well, Gary, on this one we agree to disagree on this one, my friend.
Yeah, we may, and that's what makes the world go around. But I know the fans pay the tickets, Fletch, and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, I'm just not a big fan of some of that stuff. I mean, I'm just not. But, I think with regard to retired numbers, I mean, Dave, you're right on, too. This has become the latest fad. Like, do we need to retire a number for the fans in Seattle? The 12th man because it's so noisy? I mean, this stuff is ridiculous now to me.
That is ridiculous.
Well, all I know is that no one again will wear the Playboy number 6 that I wore in college. So.
That is true.
That has been retired.
They retired the club because of you. Because everybody wanted to wear your number, and Lord knows that was the only way they could stop it. But the University of Michigan, I think they unfortunately have stopped doing this, but they did a great thing where they picked a star on the team, and they would have him wear a retired number in honor of that player, Tom Harmon.
Harmon.
1 year.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, I thought that was a good. I'm sorry.
I like that idea. Yep.
Yeah, but
I like
that was
too.
That was a good way to honor him. But I mean, one guy who'll certainly have his number retired by the Cleveland Cavaliers will be LeBron James as we come up on the NHL and NBA finals. And in the NHL, it looks like, as Gary had projected a few weeks ago, that Washington would put the pin in Las Vegas, and that looks like it's happening as they're down 3-1 at this point. But the NBA has been, to me, one of the most, and again, I'm not going to lie, I'm a Cavalier fan, so I probably get a little more emotional about this than most. But that first game, if you look at several aspects of it, first place in the last 30 seconds of the game, two of the most egregious refereeing calls that, in my mind, had cost the Cavaliers that game. The replay on LeBron, which to me, I'm not sure why you felt the need to overturn that. Looked like at best it was questionable whether he moved into it or not. So you keep the call on the floor, and then of course Green goes into the lane very very early before the second foul shot that missed. To me, are just two things that just signified. I guess I don't understand what they're doing on a foul shot. That's what somebody's supposed to be looking at, and to overturn that call at that point in time was just ridiculous. But that being said, the thing that struck me most was not necessarily J.R. Smith's stupidity, in something that basically makes Chris Webber's timeout in the NCAA final a thing of the past. But if you look at the bench, and to me, this we talked about last week, would you want LeBron or would you want Michael Jordan? Who's the best of all time? This is the difference between the two. LeBron sat there whining about what happened at the end of that game rather than getting ready and trying to focus on the overtime. And they had a camera in there. All he's doing is basically screaming that we have a timeout left. And the game was lost at that point. Michael Jordan, there's a good shot he wins that game in overtime in the same situation. And to me, that separates the two of them right there. But I mean, there was, even if they win that game, it's going to be next to impossible with what LeBron Jordan, who had a phenomenal game one before that point. It was going to be impossible for that group he had, which is about a mid-30 win team without him, to defeat one of the great teams of all time with a team that is so deep, a starting lineup that can do everything. It was going to be difficult, but now you're probably, I just don't imagine they're going to come out of here winning a game in the next two with the attitude they have. It's going to take a complete overhaul, and it's not like you have anybody on the bench who can overcome and help him out. I mean, you're a good basketball man, Fletch. What do you see on this?
Well, it's funny, Dave. I really think about this team almost like that '92 Pirates, where you know that this is it. If you don't win it this time, it's not going to happen. Although, the Cleveland did get one championship out of this run, but you know you're losing LeBron, and you know that this is it. But I mean, that Rocket team, that Warriors team is an all-time great. You have four guys who are all-stars that any one of them at any time can take over a game, and that's tough to compete against. But here's the other thing though with this team. I mean, you and I talk about this a lot, and Gary too, about dynasties, and we love our dynasties. But you know what, guys? This Warriors team's not a likable team. In this era of basketball, when you have players who join other players just to win a championship like that, it just feels wrong. I mean, you look at back in the days of Magic and Larry Bird and the rivalry they had. At no point would they ever consider joining up. It was to them. It was that whole. This is my motivation during the off season to get better, to come back and then to compete again and to beat my rival. So and the Warriors team. It's just not. I mean, Steph Curry's an amazing shooter. He's fun to watch. He enjoys the game. But, still, I just can't bring myself to like this team.
No.
The one thing I will say is they have shown they've gone through some adversity this year. I mean, they were pretty much predicted they were to be where they are. But, they had some tough times during the year. I mean, you had the Curry injury. You had a very tough, surprisingly tough series against the Rockets, who were the number one seed. And, if not for one of the worst shooting performances I think I've ever seen in my life. In that Game 7 at home, the Rockets they couldn't hit anything, and they were chuckers, Dave. They were chuckers. They were not pounding the ball like on our youth. But it was so the Warriors did have to overcome some things. And my God, do you guys not feel bad for J.R. Smith? I mean, what a rough couple of days that man's had.
That was horrible, although he didn't help himself by making three different explanations. But it was a horrible thing, but it didn't lose the game. I mean, you missed clutch foul shot, lost the game. Missing the calls, lost the game. I mean, I don't know that Smith gets an easy basket on there. The two guys right on top of him, so it's questionable whether they do that or not. It just. It was a bit of a between move, but I agree with you. I do feel bad for him.
Well, I have a couple thoughts on this. I'm not the basketball. You guys know more about basketball than I do at this juncture. I mean, I've been paying more attention this year than I have in some previous years. But, Fletch, I agree with you. I mean, I don't talk to a lot of people about the NBA, but everybody has the same reaction. Green certainly is not likable at all to most people. Durant has become unlikable, not because he went there to try to win something, blatant about it, but I mean his attitude lately is pretty obnoxious. I mean, Kerr shouldn't have to be telling him, "Would you move the ball to your other teammates?" with the game on the line against Houston in Game 6. I mean that kind of stuff is pretty distasteful. I think Curry is a fun talent to watch, and when he gets going, he can really bomb the ball in. He doesn't really bother people as much, I think, because he's on all these other ads and stuff, it seems. He seems to be a pretty likable personality. But you're right. I mean, the whole league has become a me-first kind of league. I mean, I hate to say it, but, the whole NBA is about, how many times you're on television for a Gatorade ad and all this kind of stuff. And, the Warriors clearly are kind of a symbol of that. I mean, Dave, I agree with you on the officiating. I mean, it's always easy to criticize the officiating. The whole damn year they've been talking about lane violations and stuff like that, and then, quite frankly, they don't make the call in a blatant situation. I mean, it's beyond reproach. It's kind of the same thing as some of the NHL officiating this year. I mean, like they always say, it is true. Be consistent, okay? I don't care if it's the 5 minutes to go or 5 minutes in. Make the thing consistent, and everybody can deal with it. By not making some of those calls in the overturn, I agree. I mean, I'm not sure Cleveland wins the series anyway, but why turn the series that way? Like, I mean, why not let the series turn by just what naturally probably would have happened, which, Dave, you predicted, that you didn't think Cleveland would do all that well in the series. But why do it that way? Like, I mean, I know that it's moving quick out there. There's a lot of noise. These are human beings. But the green thing in particular to me was just, and the league had no good explanation for it. Then they come out and say they made a mistake. Well, what good does that do us now? And why have been preaching about this for 2 seasons? So, I mean, in a way, I'm not sure that was the whole reason for the loss. I mean, again, love James or hate him, this postseason has been in some ways his most remarkable achievement. And if they win one of these 4 or 5 games here before they're gone, I mean, it just adds to that. I mean, the guy really has kind of taken the whole thing on his back. But you're right, I agree. I mean, I think he's not really an obnoxious whiner. But he's a whiner in his own right, which the whole league has become from the Star standpoint. Whereas you're right, Jordan would have just said, he would have told everybody, look, we got these timeouts, we got this, we got that. Here's what we're going to do when the situation happens. Perhaps Brian would have, perhaps some of the great players of the past. That's just not the way the league is anymore. So, it's a shame. But, as far as the end of the rivalry, I think it obviously is it. I mean, I think Cleveland's clearly going to have, he's probably not going to be there. Not sure what Love's situation will be with the money he's making. The rest of that roster, it's probably at best a 30-win game. It's probably over. I don't know how much the Warriors have left either. There's been some injuries and stuff, but clearly, obviously when they need to summon it up like they did against Houston and other teams, they can still do it. So I think they're going to be around for a little while longer.
I think the Power's going to go to the East next year. I think the good chance LeBron ends up in Philadelphia. If he's looking for a title and he doesn't want to go to the West, that's the only place he can really go. And I think the Power goes there because I think Boston and Philadelphia next year become the 2 strongest teams in the league, and the Power is going to shift there, in my opinion, if things play out as it looks like they will. But Gary, you made a great call, one that I did not really agree with. My claim all along was that the Caps were not a superior team to beat Vegas. I didn't think they'd get out of Tampa Bay. You made the call all along. I remember you telling me on the phone that you thought they were going to put the pin in Vegas and win the series. So why don't you tell a little about what you saw that made you think that?
Well, I mean, I think I was kind of right about that, but I haven't been right about the competitiveness series. I'm stunned at how this series has, in many ways, been far less competitive than I thought it would be. I thought this would be a long series with a lot of shifting tides and that type of thing, and honestly, it really hasn't been. And I think I'm even more. I'm even as stunned as anyone about how well the Caps have played in these games. I mean, Vegas has had some spurts since the first game where they played pretty well, including the first 10 minutes in the last game. But sustained, competitiveness and pressure and what they've done all year really hasn't been there. And I don't know. There was just a feeling I had, as the season rolled on. The Caps started to play really well at the end of March. As they were coming into the playoffs, they kind of had a little bit of a bump in the road in the early part of March where they lost some games, but they started to play really well. And I think that the judgment I made here, Dave, as this was, seeing them up close. My seats are great, here where I live in the East. I've been able to see these teams and the size of them, and the Caps are a monstrously talented team in a lot of their positions. And they also have now added a ton of speed with names that if you're not watching hockey every day, you wouldn't pay attention to. But like I said, this kid, Christian Juice, Jakob Vrana, that forward who's playing with Oshie and Backstrom. Kempney, who's been playing a lot with Karlsson, so he allows Karlsson to do a lot more offensively because they're opening the ice up. And, should we really be surprised? I mean, look at the records over the last decade. They've finished first in the division 7 times, second 2 times. 1 year they finished out of the playoffs. I mean, this is an organization that has been consistently winning for a long period of time with a lot of the same players. Ovechkin, Karlsson, Holtby's been there for most of that time frame. They go and add a coach who, quite frankly, has won since the day he got in the league in Trotz. They bring a very tough, combination to stop. And as I said, I think Dave, you and I might have communicated about this. Maybe not, the 3 of us, but The biggest problem I saw was lines one. Gallant has continued all through these playoffs, and he's been able to get away with it by playing his speed forwards. Medium-sized Carlson, very small Marchessault. Riley Smith, who's a little bit bigger, but really is a speed forward as well against top lines. Now he's doing that against a line full of houses. The smallest guy is Kuznetsov at 6'2", 215, who can move. The biggest is Ovechkin at 240, and Wilson's about 225. Look at the statistics in this series. Riley Smith has 2 goals. Both were non-important goals. Carlson got a goal in the first game. He hasn't scored since. Marchessault has nothing. He keeps matching. This is the first criticism you could lodge against Gallant the entire season. He continues to go with the same matchups that are failing. Yeah. And I think that now he's out of the series. And, his belief is, well, I don't want my fourth liners to think that they're fourth liners and any line can play against anybody else. My attitude with that is that's true to a degree, but not when you got 4 wins to go for the Stanley Cup and not when it's not working. He's made very few line adjustments. They have gotten no chances against, the Caps' big line, who is quite frankly muscling them around and pushing them around, basically defending better than the Vegas top line is. So here we are. We got a 3-1 lead. I get the sense Vegas may win one more game, but it just felt to me like, beyond just getting past Pittsburgh, which played them the best, as you've alluded to, Dave, of any of their opponents, tells you how good that Pittsburgh core is. I just think that this Caps team gave you a very, very difficult circumstance to deal with no matter who you are. And once they got on a roll, I kind of knew they would be tough to stop. And, if you look at it over the past 10 years, is it surprising that they're going to have a chance to win one? Not after 7 first-place finishes, 2 President's Trophies, a Vezina Trophy winner, a couple MVP winners. How many teams would be happy to have Backstrom be the second center on a team?
Sure. Absolutely.
This is a very, very good team that the media seems to have forgotten about. And some of the small moves have really opened up the ice, which quite frankly, by the time you get to the 50th minute in an NHL game, when they're pushing you back all the time with their speed or their size, it wears you down, and that's what this series has looked like. So it would have been a nice story for Vegas to win, but it also looks a little bit like their luck ran out to me, and quite frankly, they're not really dealing well. Even though they're all pros, they're not really dealing well with the pressure of this final. They're making a lot of defensive mistakes. They leave a lot of cap forwards unattended. Fleury, I love the guy, but he hasn't been great in this series. It finally caught up again a little bit. His rebounds have been big. They kind of defended him the other night and said that, well, he couldn't have stopped some of those goals. I don't know if I agree with that. I thought his rebound on Ovechkin's diving tip-in goal was a bad rebound. I thought Smith-Pelly's shot beat him on the short side over his shoulder inside the post. I think he's kind of slipped back a little bit, which we've seen before. And Holtby, since he finally got back in the lineup after he took over for Grubauer in Game 2, has been pretty much lights out. So that's why we have a 3-1 lead. I would expect Vegas maybe to kind of have a big effort, maybe win the game the next time, but I think the series will be over shortly. So
you think
Pittsburgh could have beat this team, folks?
I think so. One thing that really surprised me this playoff season, I did not realize how physical the Capitals were. That's something that I've really been surprised by. The other thing is that TJ Oshie seems to have developed a little bit of an attitude, which is really what was missing from his game. So you bring that up. They are a tough team, as Gary said. They've won a lot, but they've also, if you're a Capitals fan at the same time, you're not feeling really secure right now. How many 3-1 leads has this team lost over the years? Right. So I think they really need to take care of business with this. If it gets to a Game 6, or a Game 7 rather, I think that there's going to be a lot of nervous people. But you're right. This is a great team. They've Ovechkin's played well. Backstrom's just been he's been tough, and Holtby has finally become that playoff goaltender that they had been expecting, and that really that's what you want in the playoffs. You want that goaltender who's going to steal a game, and he stole a game. He stole at least one game in the Penguins series. Yep. Something that Murray had always been able to do in the past 2 years. It didn't have it this time, and that's not to say that Murray's not a great goalie. It's just that this was not his time.
Not his show. I agree.
Well, we're gonna tie things up here. We're gonna do our quick last round of one bold prediction a week. I'm going to start off with this week is the World Cup. The world's biggest event is going to start in another week. I'm going to give you the quarterfinalists this week, which will be Uruguay, Spain, France, Argentina, Brazil, Germany, yes, England. England will be in the quarterfinals this year. And one of your favorites, Fletcher and Gary, I know, the Colombian team will be in the quarterfinals this year.
Wow.
Gary, what's your bold prediction of the week?
I'm a little nervous about bold predictions. I'd like to say something about the horse race, but I'm fearful because I'm a little gutless. I don't know enough about it to say.
Come on, Gary, have that Playboy guts.
All right. Well, I'm going to go to something I know. Okay. There's a prize fight, a featherweight fight on Showtime on Saturday night, and it's a rematch. It's Luis Santa Cruz and Abner Mares. And everybody's talking about how this is going to be a great fight or whatever. Santa Cruz won the first one. He won it fairly dominant. And as all of us have followed boxing, I'm a believer that if you beat somebody the first time, it's easier the second time. So I don't know how fearless it is, Dave, but I think that Santa Cruz is going to win again. I think he's going to win more decisively than he did the first time. I don't think it'll be a knockout, but I don't think I love Abner Mares. He's an American Olympian. He got a great story, but I think Santa Cruz is a little bit better, a little bit longer. So my prediction for this week is that Santa Cruz will win, and he will win more decisively than he did a few years ago in Los Angeles. So
will it be a knockout? Are you going to say knockout?
I don't think that I'll say that, but I think that, quite frankly, I don't think the fight will be 115, 113 this time. I think it'll be a lot wider score. Let's put it that way. So.
Outstanding.
Now, Fletcher,
I don't know how fearless it is, but that's the only one I'm comfortable making. So at the moment.
All right. The nation turns to Fletcher to see what his bold prediction of the week will be.
I have a two-parter, fellas.
All right.
Part one, within 2.5 weeks, Sean Rodriguez will be replaced by a guy who's going to be coming back. And then the other thing that's going to happen as a result of that is the Pirates, based on the success of the Sean Rodriguez bobblehead night, will announce a Mario Mendoza bobblehead night at the end of August.
I love it. That's the perfect way to leave this show. Gentlemen, you have a wonderful evening, and we'll meet here next week.
All right. Sounds good.
All right, fellas.
Talk soon. All right.
Take care.
Bye-bye.